show you, and I'll tell you it's kind of small, I know, but the oldest points are at the bottom. And you can see some of the images that are on that Bullen type collection that was found online, and just how the styles change. And Leo was kind enough to bring us a Clovis point, so I could stand up and I've actually never found one in the field. They're pretty rare to find, though not impossible, but found here in Florida. And this is the oldest type of projectile point that we have. So you can come up and touch it and ask Leo questions about it later. So the oldest points are down here, and then up to more recent found up above, up to contact period. So you can kind of imagine one of the issues about an arrow. You're going to want to attach some of these other larger points onto a tip of an arrow. Not really made for that. The other main issue, what do you think they're hunting when they're hunting with larger points? Yeah, bigger points might be bigger animals that they're after. So it has a lot to do with the changes in the environments and their hunting strategies. But I can much more easily think up there, those Pinellas points used on the tips of arrows as time goes on. All right. This is just another image to show you. There's some great posters and great other ways of showing how points change over time, and they almost kind of tell their own story. If you look especially at the bases and what Bullen was looking at, you didn't look so much at the point and how things were shaped from top to bottom, but more at those bases. And they do change quite a bit over time. If you look at how these are kind of the same and related, and then you've got some of these tails that start showing up, and then some of the notchings that go on. So that's a little on chronology. There are a lot of ways to describe a lithic point. And I will be honest with you, I never made a great prehistoric archaeologist because all the little flakes get, it's like picking up little grains of rice when you drop a whole bag of rice on the floor. It can be a lot of detail, take a lot of patience. You can describe things by the tip, by the base, by the curvature, by the blade, by the cross section. And on the base, we talked about how important that was because it can tell you how they attached it. There are different ways to attach it to foreshafts or to spears. It goes on. You can also do the stemless triangular Lancelot points. These are the different terms that you might use to describe what differentiates one type of point for another. So just overall, know there's a lot of ways to describe a point and what makes when he came up with his 50 types, what makes a type a type. So the oldest ones we showed were those Clovis points that we have here today. They were looking for the megafauna, and here in Florida, we find those sites mostly in submerged areas. You were talking about the sea level differences, and if you look out here where the blue area is, that's looking at 10,000 years ago where the water surface was. So where will we find our prehistoric sites? In the ocean. And there's a great subfield study of underwater archaeologists looking for prehistoric sites, doing huge core samples into the Gulf. I would say it's a kind of a Gulf-wide effort. Over on the Atlantic side, it doesn't go quite as far out, and I don't know as many researchers working out there. But that's one thing to think about. So what other points of water do we have that aren't currently inaccessible?
Lakes.
Rivers, lakes, springs. The Osceola River Project was one conducted by FSU, and there's a great online virtual display that you can go visit. I think I took the slides out, but Wakulla Springs, Wekiva River, where a lot of megafauna have been found in situ with some of these early points. So we know that they're gathering places for people, for animals, and that they were hunting and using the land and found together with those kind of weapons. Mostly trying to get them. Archaic points. Missing a little bracket there. But about 6,000 to 2,000 BC, you have the longest cultural period in Florida, prehistorically. Lots of spears, atlatls. So we'll get to atlatls in a second. And the majority of Florida points date to this time period. So if someone comes up to you and said, hey, you went to that prehistoric weaponry thing the other night. I have this point. What do you think it is? If you want to guess an archaic point, you would not be too wrong. Most of the time, most of the points that we find in Florida date to this time. And there's lots of variation. There's lots of differences that get regionalized. I was doing this talk in Putnam County recently, and they have a Putnam point. I don't think there's a NASA point, though. We need one. So a lot of the counties have different points named after where they kind of got locally specialized. And there's another Ted Morris painting. It's a Chinook one with the spear tied on up top there. Okay. Now, this is a significant artifact related to weaponry. Anyone know what those are?
Hammer? Axe.
It's got a hole that goes through it. Maybe like a brick. Maybe.
Is that your atlatl?
It's not an atlatl, but we had, again, Leah was kind enough to bring one of this with us.
An axe.
I know, they're really deceptive. If you just found one, it would be hard to know what it was used for. These are atlatl weights. If I picked up the spear and threw it, who wants to be my target? If I took it up and threw it, let's say I could throw it 20, let's not lie here, 10 meters. I'll give myself 10 meters. If, and I'm going to use this since it's not quite as cumbersome and dangerous. Let's say I throw it 10 meters. And part of that is the physics of my arm and the arc and the speed I can get going when I throw it. What an atlatl did is it gave you one extra length of your arm. So in physics, you're supposed to be able to throw it about 3 times further. And you'd fix the notch that's in the atlatl. The actual atlatl is this wooden piece right here. Put the notch into the end of your dart, hold it, and then whoosh, let it go. You want to get a little extra on that, you put another weight here, and then the force and the velocity that you can pick up and go with.
There's a fin above your
head. So much to keep in mind up here. So these weights help through the atlatl. Now we've got a few problems to discuss. What's wrong with archaeologists and atlatls? They're wood. So a lot of times we're making assumptions that they're using atlatls. So things like these pierced, carved out whole items that might have fit over an atlatl can really help us out. And they also can call them banner stones. Here's maybe a more accurate demonstration of how it's used and thrown. If you go online, there's some great little videos you can watch of people throwing them. And when they throw them, the spear also kind of wiggles and gets a little extra energy out of its little wiggling that it goes through if they really slow it down.